Only through the connection to the real awareness can we become conscious of all that our personal selves have been programmed and constructed to cause into effect, and from there we can make the further transition to move beyond all cause and effect and no longer be a contributory factor to the demise of the simulator. The real cure for everything is to be found through the real awareness. For those still locked into their personal selves, disconnected from their real awareness, every vehicle of their personal self is programmed to agree with the ideas of the controlling cabal reptilian dark forces. So we can certainly say that the four bodies of an unaware personal self immersed individual like Lindsay, my sister, being portrayed as four large reptilian snakes is very appropriate, and how these four bodies programmed to the reptilian's design were also caged, a further indicator of how the personal self and that which makes up its construction is very much contained and restricted, enslaved and imprisoned in the creational, controlled Matrixxx. Perhaps here she was surely underplaying the reality of what I have just outlined. She was prodding and poking the mighty snakes, the representatives of her four bodies, and that which was contributing toward the demise of the very simulator she was in, rather flippant in her attitude to the extent to which she would release the biggest snake. The unconscious agreement is massive in that it is compounded with the endless lifetimes of agreement to restriction in relation to the conscious mind and emotional agreement which is temporary to each lifetime, but which still adds to the unconscious each time around, to compound even further a continuously restricting consciousness that turns a simulator ever darker through cause and effect, as the simulator is the consciousness expressed. And behold a dark sky, that was once full of colour, and all the increasing black holes in the simulator. So I would suggest this biggest snake was the unconscious part of Lindsay, an unconscious that is the biggest contributing factor to the demise of creation through compounded lifetimes of agreement. Usually, any process is just that, an escalating series of steps to reach an objective. With becoming more aware, this would be the case also. We would start at the beginning and up the ante. It would become progressively more real as we continue to move out of the comfort zones of the indoctrinated, routined self and into the unknown, a scary thing for the personal self. So it must be a series of gradual steps in order that the personal self is not overwhelmed. Getting through the personal self then would suggest we would generally work from the densest part of ourselves at first, the emotional, mental parts, and then, after a while, we would start delving into the recesses of the subconscious etheric body, releasing all the agreements there, and surely this would be the most daunting aspect of facing the personal self, considering all the lifetimes of lurking ideas across the full spectrum range from disturbing to unnerving to downright horrifying. Imagine if someone were just beginning their process and they were immediately to prospect around inside their deepest subconscious. This seemed demonstrated here, as Lindsay would uncage and release the largest snake. The subconscious laid bare, and evidently she was not ready for what she would release, as it would engulf, overwhelm, and restrict her in its coils. It wasn't so much that I wouldn't or couldn't assist, but more so, it didn't make sense to do so. Everyone is always the deciders of their experience through their free will. We can advise and afford suggestions, but ultimately an individual has to make the decisions and choices that they do. if we enforce our will on others, even if we think it's in their best interests, we are imposing and violating their free will. We cannot interfere with the choices others make, lest we become controllers in our own right and immerse ourselves in creation as we embroil ourselves in the cause and effect of others. All I could realistically do then was make a suggestion, and it was to relax and stop fighting the snake she had unleashed, that which she had subjected herself to, by opening the Pandora's box of the subconscious. Regardless of the experience we find ourselves in, our circumstances or situations, the best place we can stand to deal with it most effectively is with our real awareness, with the awareness of our real awareness. This connection and position would be found in creation by being now, being in this being-isness state, which is aside and objective to the mind and emotions of the created consciousness of the personal self, which is this real awareness, which is this real you, which is this isness life is. A good method of achieving this state is simply to be okay, to let go. In other words, we release ourselves from the trappings of the ever-turning mind and emotions, and so we stand more readily in our real awareness, and thus my suggestion was well founded, that Lindsay just relax and stop struggling with her personal self, in other words, in relation to what she had subjected herself to. Perhaps easier said than done, but it's always a choice, and she would heed my words, and was released from the crushing realizations that her subconscious snake had inflicted upon her. She would still have to deal with what had been revealed to her, but could do so far more effectively in this state of just being, of just letting go, of just being okay, like the demonstration that the sun is ever providing us.
Yeah, thank you. No, that's very, very good. Also, it would seem as though, another viewpoint here, it would seem as though she got your agreement and got you to go downstairs to her personal self. And 4 is also foundation, and to show you what she's into. And so there you go. So we all have a personal self. We have a personal life with others also. And it's how we relate to that. And one of the things is that we get in, as we get into this, the new presentation, etc., we sometimes tend to try and get others to agree with us to see our view, which is understandable. So again, you were, in the beginning, you were writing your experiences on the real side, and she got your attention to see what she was into. So, and that's okay. And that's that relationship. This is where relationships are interesting, and that is that they can sway a person from one thing to another. And so we decide, and we've had these relationships before, and you know, again, you decide too how that relationship is going to be. Again, we're all beings, just like the stars in the sky. They are all separate beings, but yet we're all in the same life. And in the personal setting here, this is what keeps the drama going, and the distraction is these relationships, thinking in terms of sisters, brothers, husbands, dads, wives, etc. And most people want to keep thinking in those terms. I too raised a daughter, and now she is the daughter. She's her own being, and she makes her own choices. I'm indifferent to everything that she does because that is her life. I don't chase her. And when my so-called mother, my physical mother, left this plane, I was totally indifferent to that because she's on her own journey, making her own choices. So relationships become interesting, and as we learn to recognize the isness and have a real relationship with that reality, then these other relationships become what they are or what we decide them to be. And so, like REBISAR said at one time, life demands a marriage, and that's very, very real. So the idea is that when we learn to recognize the is, we have a choice. And when we're going through the process, like most people are before they recognize it, because that's a lot, they make the choice. Are they going to stay with their relationships? Because nobody goes anywhere. Okay, we're all here and now. It's just how we relate to each other that becomes the difference. And so those little personal attitudes held to will bring us back here in our own way, because it will create a distraction. And so this is where, you know, just like you're seeing with her, we'll just say her 4 bodies and her subconscious, even though she relaxes, etc., and from the restriction is still there. And so it is up to her to decide how she's going to face that and deal with that also. So again, it shows that she has an attachment for these ideas. She doesn't really recognize them, but, you know, it's just like the surface world here. Most people don't recognize what they're into. It all looks good, all the different things that have been created and the ideas, etc. And for the most part, most people do not want to see what's behind the curtain. They want to just buy into the surface world. And that's fine. That's a choice. New presentation is all about recognizing the isness. And each person has to, you know, from the references created, they each have to decide how they're going to go about this. Now, the old master and guru idea, it isn't there anymore. We're not the babysitters. We're not providing protection or anything like that. The thing is that as the person takes the risk to see more and be more, that becomes their own protection. And yes, the guidance is there. And just like your parents, they do provide a certain protection, but they don't live your life. So this is the bigger step. And this is why there's only a few here looking. But to actually stand real with this reality is a lot more. But again, most people will want to hang on to their personal relationships as to how they are. Actually, when you recognize how to relate to people being to being, especially your so-called relatives, things become a lot better, even though they may not recognize it, but at least you do. And what you're doing is you're allowing them the choice 100% of their life, right or wrong, according to you. So this is a very interesting experience we go through with the whole of life. So just like the sun shining, there are other suns. But does the sun say to the other sun, oh, you're my brother? Okay, so in the corporation, it was called the Brothers of the Leaf. Well, these things are all cute ideas, but no more. It's being to being. It's all being real. It becomes more real and more real. It just depends upon how real the individual wants to get. And that's the fun part. Until you are totally unrestricted, and it's better than any freedom that you can imagine. But it has to be decided every single moment. That's how real it is, too. Thank you, Kevin. UK Kevin, thank you so much. And everybody attending, it's all for you. I wrote it here in the chat, and so this is better understood. Again, when a person takes the risk to see more, to sincerely recognize this isness, that equals your real protection. It gets that real. It's so cool. You need to step up, and life will step up. Everything equals itself. We're beyond the babysitting days. This is where it gets very real. And then all of a sudden, you have no restrictions. You don't need protection. You become real. That's the best part. Have fun. See you next time.